Hey, Steve here. And today I'm talking about putting wind in their sails. What's that? You're like, I didn't sign up for a boating class. Well, that's not what this is. This is just one of those little things that's going to help you when working with kids. Because whether you're in the classroom or whether you're in a leadership position in a hallway, wherever you are, if you put them in a situation where you're putting wind in their sails, you're asking for trouble. That's right, trouble. With a capital T. Anyway, so let's go forward with this, because what I'm talking about here is this. Just go with me for a minute. You ever seen a sailboat on a lake? And let's forget about it having a motor, all right? So it doesn't have a motor. The only way that it's going to go is either drift with the tide or drift with the winds, or if you put up the sails, then you can direct the sails to capture the wind and go where it wants to go. Well, in the case of classroom management, if you put wind in the sails of the kids, that means that you've given them the opportunity to either just kind of go with it or to direct that wind and use it for their own purposes. And in a classroom, it works like this. You have Steve sitting in the back of the classroom and you're at the front of the classroom, and what you decide is that you don't like what Steve's doing. So from the front of the classroom, you say, Steve, yes, Steve, listen to me. You stop doing what you're doing. And so now all heads turn towards Steve. What? What's Steve doing, huh? And now Steve has to decide whether Steve wants to save face or Steve wants to just go with it and let it, just kind of drift with it, right? Well, if Steve decides to save face, then that means he's going to take that wind and direct it for his own purposes, which means that you're possibly going to get a reaction from him because he's at the back of the room, you're at the front of the room, and now it's time for him to show out. Oh yeah, well, blah, 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 blah. Because what's funny is that there's something between, the distance between you and him is considered barrier space, and the more people and desks that are between you, the more there's a little safety factor there, right? And so if you want to create more trouble for yourself, do something like that. Call them out in the middle of class in front of everybody else, or push that little button which says, I'm going to make you stop what you're doing by pointing it out in front of everybody. Steve's doing it again. Steve's doing this, Steve's doing that, blah, 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 blah. So then Steve has to decide whether Steve responds to you, right? Another example of it, I was in observing a class one day, and there's a young man who walks into the class, and he's got a little bit of attitude in there, and he was a regular customer of the assistant principal's, and he and I had been working on stuff, trying to figure out if we could help him not do all this. Not see the assistant principals every day, that type of thing. And we were working on this. And he saw me in the back of the room in there, and he just kind of nodded, and he went and he sat and he put his head against the wall. And what ends up happening again in this classroom is the teacher's working. I'm there to observe the teacher. The teacher is talking, and the kid raises his hand. And the teacher says, yes. And he says, can you make it warmer in here? I'm very cold. And he says it very nicely and very politely, just like that. And the teacher says, And he walks over to the thermostat, and he goes to the thermostat, and on purpose pushes it down, 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 all the way on purpose so everybody sees that he's pushing it down. And he looks at the kid, and he says, tomorrow, bring a sweater. Now, I guess he forgot that I was in the room, lost his mind, and didn't realize I was sitting there or whatever. But there's no reason to do that. And he has just called that kid out in front of everybody. Now, the great thing is, that student and I have been working on his responses to stuff, and he looked at me, he looked back at the teacher, and he decided just to lean against the wall. And what I end up doing is I end up having a conversation with him. I congratulated him on his behavior, and the teacher and I had some long conversations about how inappropriate that was, what he did. So he put wind in his sails. He gave the young man the opportunity to take that wind and redirect it and use it however he wanted to, disrupt that class, do whatever, because he did it just like that. So don't put wind in their sails. Do your best to not create a bad situation in your classroom. Because when you put wind in their sails, they have the ability to take that wind and direct it for their own use. And sometimes you're going to end up with a total mess that you don't know what to do with. Food for thought. Thanks for listening. Hey, by the way, don't forget, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. You can subscribe by pushing the button. See, like I got this little sign back here, right? And you could look down here and there's a button down here, and over here there's a bell. If you push on that bell, it'll let you know whenever I update my YouTube channel. Thanks for listening again. Thanks for watching. Ta-ta.